My name's Aron from a company called Ace Auto Works. I'm a fabricator and a car builder per se for some of the land speed cars out racing right now. And I've also worked on quite a few show cars with a company called Pure Vision for SEMA that have won Ford Design and Chevy Design. And we're going to just talk about those a little bit, I think.
Not everybody can weld. I think people think they can weld, but when they do the welding and you look at the seam, you go, you shouldn't be doing this, or you need to practice quite a bit more.
Yeah.
So master welder, is that appropriate?
I wouldn't say a master because, obviously Instagram has kind of showed everybody what everybody can do. But sure. I kind of get a kick out of the guys who, they post a little 1-inch weld. And it's yeah, that's all good and great. But, half the stuff I weld up, I don't even take a picture of because it's just another job for me. I'm not really a huge Instagrammer. I'm kind of still new at the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because I kind of grew up in a lot of shops where it's a lot of old time guys, and it was cell phones weren't a thing. So it's nobody had their cell phone out. Nobody was taking pictures. So I'm really poor at taking pictures and really stopping for a moment to take pictures. So I just kind of work through all the stuff that's what's going on and just on to the next one. And everybody's like, oh, did you take a picture of that? I'm like, no, I just got the job done, because that's
right.
kind of what I was taught to do, is just get the job done and do the best you can. Basically, how it started is I actually went to school in Oak Park, California.
Okay.
And it was the anti of everything I do, pretty much. And
so hold on, let me interrupt you there, because I know Oak Park very well. It's really not very far from here. It's a 10-15 minute drive.
Right.
I think I know where you're going with this, but I definitely need to hear it from you.
So Oak Park, a lot of kids were in honors and AP classes, and it was more geared towards the white collar kind of lifestyle of doing a lot of paperwork, a lot of phone calls, things like that. And that just wasn't me. I'm more of a hands-on kind of guy. And the only shop classes that we had were wood shop. So I took wood shop all 4 years. I'm actually still in contact with my wood shop teacher from high school. He actually salt races, and he lives up in Oregon now, but we still talk all the time, and he still keeps in touch with what's going on, what I'm doing, because he's pretty proud of one kid actually got out and did the whole automotive thing and kind of paved my own path. So
yeah, you beat the status quo.
Yeah, definitely. So it was definitely a little bit different. If anything happened to anybody's car in high school, everybody's oh, just go ask Aron, he'll fix it. Because he knows what's going on. It's all right, sure, okay. I'll take it. And then so during high school, I kind of got really bored in the shop class, so I started doing other stuff and kind of working on my own cars. And I had a 64 Ranchero at the time that constantly broke. So I was fixing that thing all the time. And my funny story, my parents actually went out to dinner to a new place in Ventura called Hosie's. For those people who don't know, Hosie's was owned by ARP and actually still is. And it's a restaurant that the owners of ARP wanted a good place to eat, so they had this place called Hosie's. And through a roundabout story, I was told to meet one of the ARP guys, one of the guys that works for ARP. His name's Chris Rasky. I was told to meet him at a shop at this address at this time. And I was like, oh, this is my break. This is going to be awesome, So I show up to the shop. Unbeknownst to me, it was actually Kenny Detweiler's engine shop. And I showed up, 10 minutes early, typical deal. I was still in high school, so I drove myself, made sure to get there on time. And I show up, and I'm kind of hanging out, walking in the shop door. And Kenny comes over to me, and he's like, hey, can I help you? And I was like, yeah, is Chris Rasky around? And they're like, what time did he tell you you'd be here? And I was like, I don't know, about 5 minutes. He'll be like, oh, he'll be here in about 2 hours and 5 minutes, if you're lucky. I said, oh, well, is there anything I can do? And he's like, you want to do something? And I was like, yeah, I just want to help out, whatever I can do. He's like, the dustpan and the broom's right there. Have at it. Just start cleaning stuff up. I said, okay. So pretty much I asked Kenny when I was leaving, I said, hey, can I come back another time and do this? He goes, you can come back as much as you want and do this whenever you want. And I was like, all right, awesome. So that's pretty much what I did. And I didn't really ask for any money because it was, I mean, hanging around 2,000 and 3,000 horsepower engines all the time was pretty cool. To just see them going and seeing them on the dyno and just being around it was really neat for me. Right. So I did that pretty much every day after school. And then on the weekends, I'd go over there because Kenny was still working on the weekends and doing a lot of work on the weekends. And finally, a fabricator came in. His name was Steve Watt of Maxwell Industries. And he goes, and I was like, oh, man, you got to teach me how to weld. You got to teach me how to weld. And I mean, I was probably 17 at the time. And he goes, well, how much do you make cleaning this shop? I said, well, I don't make anything. I just come here because I like it. He goes, well, come to my shop, clean my shop. I'll pay you to clean my shop. And then you can use all the tools in my shop and learn how to do whatever you want to do. Wow. And I was like, oh, bitchin'. So I said, hey, Kenny, I'm going to go over here. He's like, yeah, no problem. Go ahead. You know, like I don't pay you anyway, so go ahead. So I went over there and literally just started burning material up, just learning how to weld, and just sat there for hours upon hours upon hours of every single day, just learning how to weld at like 17, 18 years old and really getting good at it. And this was a guy who built all the headers for Duttweiler. So it was all stainless tubing I had to learn on, which is not the easiest thing to learn on. And I'm telling you, I probably burned up, I don't know, 2 55-gallon drums full of scrap material of just stainless tubing, of welding it all together, cutting it apart, welding it, cutting it. And it takes a lot of time, a lot of patience. And one thing I find that you really have to have the personal drive to want to weld. If somebody's making you weld, you're never going to be good at it. You really have to genuinely want to do it for yourself. And it's one of those things that you really have to focus on. And when you flip your hood down, the whole world doesn't exist anymore. Nothing else matters other than your hands and your feet and what each thing is doing to make that good weld. I mean, every welder will, I'm sure, tell you that, like, you'll sacrifice your hand, like, burning just to get that little last bit of the weld to look perfect, you know? And that was one thing. You just learn how to endure whatever it takes to get the product to be what you want it to be, because it's all, at the end of the day, it's all going to be a representation of you. So if you want your product to look good, you want yourself to look good, and your image to look good, you got to put in the work to make it happen. And that's pretty much where I started. I talked to Kenny and I talked to Steve, and they're like, well, you kind of need like a more general automotive understanding about what's going on. So kind of took that and I looked around at schools of what to do, and I really had no idea until I was reading an article in a magazine about a bill that was coming up through basically the government, and SEMA said, like, took out an ad in the magazine and said, hey, everybody go check this out, you know, like, and just read it and see what you guys want to do. And I went on SEMA's website, and they actually had a SEMA university, and I was like, oh, that's cool. You know, what's that? So I started researching it a little bit more, and actually the school I went to is University of Northwestern Ohio. It's in a little tiny corner of Ohio, and they were sponsored by SEMA University, or SEMA. And I said, all right. So I started checking it out, you know, and put in an application, and they're like, yeah, we'll definitely take you, you know. So I went out there and checked it out, and I didn't even waste any time. I said, yeah, this is what I want to do. And right after high school, didn't even take the summer off, just gathered all my stuff, moved out there, and started going to school for being a race car mechanic, pretty much is what it is. It's a course that has general automotive, diesel, high performance, and alternate fuels. And I went for you have to get a regular automotive and then the high performance automotive. And then they had an option to get a bachelor's degree extension off of the associate's degree you got. And I said, yeah, I'll take that. So I have a specialized studies in aftermarket automotive business management. So did that, and during the summers, what I would do is I would come back here because the combination of Kenny and Steve, they called me and said, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm going to school. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory what I was doing. And they're like, can you take a summer off? And I was like, what's going on? And they said, we have a project we we really need more people, more fabricators. We need stuff to get done. And we know we can count on you. We've all worked with you and we like you. So come on back and we'll put you to work for the summer. So that first summer, I believe, was 2007. And that was the year that we built the original Speed Demon. So the Speed Demon is a land speed car that races out at the Bonneville Salt Flats. It had its first iteration, which was a white and orange car, and then now the current car is a gold car. The first car, we got the car back from the body shop. They built the body at a place called Nemesis Air Racing in Mojave Desert. Built the body of the car, but there was no engine in the car and there wasn't a bunch of stuff. Basically, they lengthened the frame, they rebuilt the body, and then they dropped it off at Steve's shop and said, hey, if it's not there, you guys need to build it and put the whole car together. Oh, yeah, we're going to be racing in 7 months. So basically, me and Steve and a guy named Dave Diviak, who's a great fabricator, has taught me a lot over the years, and a couple other guys, we just got to work and started working like we normally work to get the job done. And that was the first year of the Speed Demon, which was pretty fun. There's a lot of cool stuff that happens. And one thing I gotta attribute a lot of like what I do to is the people you hang out with. You really gotta hang out with the top class guys you can get to. Don't be the smartest person in the room ever, kind of deal. And when you're hanging out with guys like Kenny Detweiler and Steve Watt and all these guys, they definitely they up your game real fast. Yeah. Because, I mean, there's no room for error. So it has to be perfect the first time or you're going to redo it until it's perfect. So you really think about how to get to the best place about making things as quickly as you can. And so after that summer of working on the Speed Demon and putting it all together and doing all the work, the owner of the car, a guy named Ron Main, came up to me and he goes, hey, where are you going? I said, well, I got to go back to school. I go to school in Ohio. I got to finish it, you know? And he's like, oh, okay. Well, we're racing in a couple months and we've all talked. We want you to come out to the race. So I don't really have the funds to get out there. He goes, don't even worry about that. We'll fly you from your school to the Salt Flats. We'll pick you up and you're just part of the team now. I was like, okay. So sounded like a good deal to me. So that was the first year I went to Bonneville Salt Flats and kind of, I guess the coined phrase is salt fever. Once you go out there, man, it's tough to break it because it's a cool place to be. Yeah. And so every year after that, I'd been going. I haven't missed Bonneville since 2007. Wow. And I'd been part of the original Speed Demon team for the entire length of that car running. And then in 2014, the car unfortunately tumbled over at 380 miles an hour. George Poteet, I've got to know him over the years. He gets out of the car, no broken bones. He's sitting in the ambulance, and me and Steve come up to him. Steve's kind of the crew chief, and we go up to him, and he says, "Can we fix it?" And me and Steve are like, "Not quite. It's not really too fixable." And the next sentence out of his mouth was, "Can we have a new car for next year?" And me and Steve had been waiting for that. Waiting to build a new car because there was so many things that we had learned over the years. I mean, we're talking about 7 years of every year something changed on that car. So we were really trying to make it as fast as possible. And it was the fastest car at the time, but we knew how to make it even faster and even better than it was. So as soon as we got home, Steve and me went to lunch and he goes, "So you ready?" And I was like, I've been ready for this one. So we got the frame jig all set up and started laying tubing and built another car, the current car, the gold car, in, I think it was right about 10 months, 11 months. We built the car from nothing. And the car was actually, the chassis was being built here. I did a lot of the work on the chassis. And then the body was going to be a little bit different this time. It was a carbon fiber body built by a guy named Kenny Colesback in Kenny's Components in North Carolina. And I actually flew out to North Carolina and helped him a little bit with the body and really kind of under Steve oversaw a lot of the build and a lot of the process of what really went in to build one of these things. I can tell you I've probably met more people through the Speed Demon car than pretty much any other car that I've worked on.
Really?
And it is like a lot of guys that come to the pits and hang out, you really don't realize who they are until somebody tells you who they are after they left. Like I think probably 2 years ago, I'm sitting there talking to a guy named Trevor, and I was just chatting away, you know, telling him about the car, this, that, and the other. And come to find out at that night at dinner, they're like, yeah, you know, Trevor. And I was like, yeah, he's super cool guy. You know, we were just BSing, and he was the VP of Holly Products.
Okay.
And I was like, didn't even know it.
Yeah.
And it was like, dude, that's so awesome. Like, it's kind of like where it takes people out of their element when they go to like somebody else's pits and they watch you, and it's like, I mean, I don't think it's anything special anymore because we've done it for so long and done the car and do it how we do it every year. But everybody comes in and they're like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, there's nothing else on the planet like this car.
Sure.
And I was like, I mean, it's definitely cool to be a part of that project, and just the people and the caliber of people that you meet, being a part, being out at the racetrack, being in the mix of what's going on. And that's what I mean. If I were to tell somebody now, like, how do I get into the industry? How do I be a part of a super big project like that? And it's like, you literally just go in and start at the bottom and just start shaking everybody's hand and just saying hi to everybody, and don't be bashful. Just go in there, and if people don't want you there, they'll tell you they don't want you there. But more times than not, everybody's going to be pretty well receptive to what's going on and you helping out. I mean, you want to be in off-road racing, you got to go to the races, go talk to people, be like, hey, how can I help? I'm just here hanging out. I want to help you guys, you know?
Right.
Everybody's willing to take some help. Most recently, I actually stepped away from the Speed Demon team a little bit, and I actually have a land speed car that's at my shop right now. It's a 2GAZ powered land speed car. It was a previous car, and we got it. Me and my coworker Waylon, we basically revamped the entire car. Took it down to the bare chassis, did a bunch of chassis modifications to it, and cut every single tab off the car, retabbed everything, changed where the motor sits. I mean, changed the entire car. And that thing's getting ready to run here in May. So we're real excited for that thing. And the owner is over the moon about it, and we're equally as excited because Waylon's never been to the Salt Flats, and he went this last year with me as just a spectator, and I'm a terrible spectator. I hate it. So we were there for like a day and a half, and then we left. Usually we go there all week. So it's going to be lots of fun racing this car, and definitely getting a little bit more into the crew chief position, I guess you could say, because it's kind of exciting for me. Along that whole midst of the Speed Demon car, when I came back from college, there wasn't like a for sure job for me, like on any of these places. So I actually met up with a guy named Bruce Douglas, and he had a hot rod he was putting together. He goes, hey, I just want you to put my hot rod together, and I'll just pay you hourly to put my hot rod together. And it was a 57 Chevy, and I said, perfect. So started doing that. A couple months into it, he goes, so I'm tired of spending money. I want you to help me make some money. And I was like, I don't know how to do that, but sure, whatever you want me to do, I'll help you out.
Okay.
And he goes, well, I have an auto parts company, and I want you to set up and run a distribution warehouse for auto parts for me. And I was like, okay, sure. Why not? Right. I said, I have no idea what I'm doing. He goes, all you have to do is listen. I said, I got 2 ears, 1 mouth. I can listen pretty good. So I started just doing that. And I did that for a year and realized it really wasn't the path that I wanted to be on. So kind of comes full circle back to ARP. A guy named Bob Florine at ARP calls me up and he goes, hey, what are you doing? I said, working. He goes, what are you doing like for work? I said, well, I'm running a distribution warehouse for auto parts. He goes, that doesn't sound like you. And I said, it's really not, but it's what's working right now. He goes, well, there's a guy in Simi Valley. He's asked me numerous times about people to work for him, and I think you'd be a good fit. Give him a call. Here's his number. And it was Steve Strope of Pure Vision. And called him up, and he said, yeah, come on down. And So I started working at Pure Vision, and the guys over there, I couldn't speak highly enough of. They're it's literally a family. It's not a work environment where you clock out and you clock in kind of deal. It's those guys all look out for each other, and it is like, it's just a family for sure. Kelly and Pete and Troy and Eric and all the guys over there, everybody that's been a part of all those projects has been instrumental in growing my abilities for sure. So worked there for quite a while, and we built some pretty cool cars. Really, really cool cars. The first year I went with them to SEMA was I think first or second car they actually ever drove into SEMA, because one of the big things about SEMA is a lot of cars get pushed in.
Right.
Not a lot of people know that, but a lot of cars get pushed in and pushed out.
Sure.
So this was one of the first or second cars they actually ever got to drive the car in. And I did the exhaust on it, and man, it killed. It did so good. It was a car called the Anvil Mustang. It was for a company called Anvil Auto. They did carbon fiber components, and it was a 69 Mustang. It was a lot of fun to build. With those guys. And then just kept building over the years, and I don't know, there's a couple different places I worked for in the meantime. I worked for a place called Walden Speed Shop, working for Bobby Walden, doing frames and stuff, and learning a little bit about sheet metal, and did some work for a place called Bronze Automotive. It was a kind of a custom shop down in Long Beach area. So it's kind of like a gypsy. I just kind of went around to wherever was a place that needed somebody. So kind of hopped around. Yeah, nobody was really stoked that I'd kind of take a week off for Bonneville. So like trying to it was actually 2 weeks at the time, because we had two events that were both a week long. So trying to tell a company like a regular 9 to 5 or like, hey, I need to take 2 weeks off. They were like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. So a lot of the shops were a little bit more lenient towards it, because I would just come and go, and hey, we need you to do this. Perfect. Bam. Fly over. Just go over for a couple weeks or months or whatever they needed. Through all the work, and I'd been kind of shopping Craigslist for tools and stuff like that, and I ran out of places to put tools at certain people's shops, and everything was everywhere and all scattered, and everybody was always asking me, what are you going to do with all this crap? You ever going to do something with it one day? And then finally I just I bit the bullet and rented a shop, tiny little shop, like so tiny. I think it was like less than 800 square feet. It was tiny. One car at a time, one car on the lift, one car under the lift, and then all my tools in there. And I just started doing stuff. And most of the time I was doing a lot of headers, a lot of custom tube work, stuff like that for turbocharging systems and supercharging systems, and just a bunch of all kinds of stuff. Pretty much any fabrication that anybody needed to come through the door, I could figure it out. That was kind of the whole start of the deal. And now I have a little bit bigger shop, and I have one employee. I don't really consider him an employee. I consider him more of a co-worker, because we both bounce ideas off of each other, and he's a great asset to everything. His name's Waylon Jeffrey, and definitely makes a lot of what we do, what Ace Auto Works does, that much better. So it's really key to have people that you can really count on that are like family, because this industry isn't one of those industries where you're just like 9 to 5, I'm out of here, I'm going to go do something else. It consumes your life.
Yeah.
Like a car guy is a car guy through and through, and it's your entire life. It just consumes you.
Oak Park has a certain culture. We kind of touched on it a little bit, and it's not a car culture.
Not at all.
You know, I grew up in Calabasas.
Yeah.
Where there was a little bit of the car culture, like a tiny little
bit bleed over
sprinkle.
from San Fernando Valley.
Yeah, probably. You know, you had a couple of rich kids that had like STIs and Evos, and you know, some of them had like what was in the 2000s, early 2000s. What would that be? Like an E92, E93 M3.
Yeah.
We had a guy who drove an SVT Mustang. You know, so we had some car guys. You know, and my group, we were kind of car guys, and most of us were kind of just, you know, boys will be boys type of thing.
Yeah.
But I just remember me and a couple of other friends were just obsessed with this crap, really.
Right.
So Oak Park, I did some work at Oak Park. I used to have a little kind of portable recording studio. It was one of my earliest businesses when I was like, I don't know, early 20s. And I was invited to record the Oak Park choir. And I thought Calabasas was like Little Town. And then I went into Oak Park. I was like, wow, this is like Little Town.
Yeah.
And it's so close to the 101 and literally 20, 30 minutes away from the city. Well, maybe not 20.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's close enough. So I didn't see much of a car culture there. And you're talking about being kind of this outcast almost, where you're this only person.
Absolutely.
So tell me about that experience. How did that go?
So it was definitely a little bit different growing up in Oak Park. My dad and my brothers, my parents are separated. My dad and brothers have been kind of car people because they had to be car people because we had to work on our cars. And that was part of the deal. And growing up, my brother went to tech school as well.
Okay.
His name is Gavin Cranford. He does Slim's fabrication and does a lot of motorcycle stuff now. But back in the day when I was in high school, I got to see him every other weekend. Well, he always had a faster, pretty decent car, and we'd go out to the street races out in the Inland Empire.
Okay.
So, yeah, and I kind of got into that, and he had a 77 Dodge Aspen, and every week something was either broken on it or we were fixing something to go faster so we could go out to the street races and kind of do that whole deal. And my dad drove 6440 Econolines.
Okay.
With the engine right next to you.
Yeah. You're kind of sitting on top of it, right?
Yeah. Well, growing up, I did sit on top of that thing. Like my ass just burnt all the time.
Yeah.
But and you could literally work on the thing while it was running in traffic. Not a problem. You just pop the hood and start working on it, right? So we worked on those things day in and day out. If we had a problem, if it could have a problem, it had it. We fixed it and kept on trucking. So I kind of got the bug to do that kind of stuff when I was like younger on my dad's stuff. And then my mom, we moved to Oak Park, and I missed it. There wasn't enough of it. So anything I could get my hands on, I'd take it apart and put it back together. Anything. And then I got a 64 Ranchero, started driving that thing around, of course, had dual flow masters on it. 40 series, like the loudest ones you could get. And everybody knew where I was at all times because it's like, oh, yep, there he goes, Right. And it's definitely, you have to, as just a person, be an individual before you can try and fit into something.
Sure.
And in high school, I was definitely an individual. I wasn't really made to fit into that mold that they were trying to mold people to be.
Sure.
So when I was like a marginally good student, like not even, I was like barely passing all my classes kind of deal because it just wasn't interesting to me.
Sure, yeah.
But my wood shop, that was awesome. My wood shop teacher, Bob Saw, he definitely had all the stuff around. So I'd go tinker at all the stuff, and I'm like, oh, teach me this, teach me that, teach me this. And he's like, dude, like, what do you, like, nobody does any of this around here. Why do you want to do this stuff? I'm not going to do this stuff because you're never going to do anything with it. And I was like, no, I promise you, I will do something with this. And he's like, yeah, I've heard that 100 times, just a beat down teacher that's just been like defeated. And I over the years, we got to be good friends about it, and definitely saw all the cool stuff that could happen just from a wood shop, So I was like, oh, I got to do something with this. And just the industry of automotive isn't just like, it's so broad. There's so many different scopes you could do. And it's if somebody wanted to get into it, all you'd have to do is watch every form of motorsport and pick one and go do it.
Yeah.
But you have to go. You have to go do it. You have to be out there. And it's the whole deal of, it's kind of funny. I see a lot of younger guys now, they're all over Instagram and taking pictures of stuff. And I saw a funny little meme that said, when did this, a picture of a camera, replace this? And it was a picture of a 1/2-inch drive impact, And it would definitely kind of resonated with me because I've always been more of a hands-on guy. And I like to take the old school approach on a lot of stuff. So,
right.
But Oak Park just really didn't fit me per se. And that was okay at the time because I really didn't know, but I got to know what I liked and what I didn't like. And that really paved the path for me. So when I went to college, it was pretty much, I didn't even have to study for tests. It was cake. It was simple because it was just, that's how my brain worked. That's how because it was more of a hands-on type of school.
Sure.
So that's how pretty much it went through and went through my brain is just a lot easier than trying to figure out things like algebra 2 and, just none of that really resonated because it wasn't applicable to me at that moment.
Right.
Where I think it applied to a lot of the kids that did the AP honors stuff and definitely went on to be the more white collar and more engineer type. I wish I probably stuck to a little bit more of the engineering stuff early on, but it just wasn't, my schooling wasn't high enough to get to there, I believe, but who knows? Could have been.
I want to kind of move into what you did fabrication work wise for the land speed car, because you mentioned that there was an accident. And
there was, yeah.
So much of the safety has to do with how strong a weld is.
Yeah. So we did a lot of that chassis. We got the chassis. It pretty much showed up done. And it was pretty much a modified drag race chassis.
Got it.
And we were not happy with it pretty much from the start. It was just not what we had could have done at the time. But all the componentry and all the accessories that we were working on, we made sure everything was, all of the welds for the exhaust system had to be purge welded because, and it was all 321 stainless stuff, like straight up aircraft stuff because, one thing about land speed racing is a lot of people don't understand is you're under full power for a minute. When you say full power for a minute, imagine holding an engine on a dyno at 100% load for a minute.
Right.
And watching everything just come crumbling down.
Right.
You talk to any engine builder and you tell them, oh yeah, run it for a minute, just full wide open, full load, wide open as hard as you can. And they're like, I don't want to warranty this.
Yeah.
That's pretty much where it comes down to.
Right.
And every component needs to be like the absolute most endurance style of building something. So, and the other thing you got to keep in mind is we as a team come from the backgrounds of drag racing and circle track racing, a lot of sprint cars, and just a lot of forethought of being able to work on it. One thing we prided ourselves on is, and we pretty much still do, is there's no technical engineer. Nobody has a engineering degree that has worked on that car for a long time. And a lot of the guys that build stuff just built stuff. And we built it at such a high level that it had to be just the best we could do because we knew how bad everything was going to be tested. After that first year, when we got the car back, we tore it all apart and restarted again because there was so much stuff that, like myself, I didn't understand how much abuse everything takes. And the quality of the welding, the quality of the machining, the quality of the fit of everything. And then you got to be able to work on it at the same time because you're out there for a week. It's not like a pack it up and go home.
Sure.
You traveled 13 hours with 2 trucks and trailers and you got 12 guys out there and you got the owner that came in from Tennessee and you've got a week. You best bet everything's going to break or you're going to break everything trying to get to where you need to be.
Right.
So everything, one other thing that's kind of, we've all worked really hard to is it's never had a mechanical fault. And when I say mechanical fault, like nobody left a screw loose, nobody left a bolt loose, nobody left a drain line loose, no oil leaks. Of course there's small little ones, but nothing that literally catastrophically stopped the program. And that was part of being just a diligent mechanic, really, of everybody who's touched every single bolt on the car. So there's checklists and things like that, but really it comes down to just being a super diligent mechanic and being a good fabricator and knowing what's going to take the abuse and what won't.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to hear that because I know so little about that world. I know the world, like when you're talking about 1 minute, and most people would think, like, what's the big deal? 1 minute's really not that big of a deal. You're on the racetrack for, 20, 30 minutes at a time.
Right.
But you're not at full throttle 20, 30 minutes. Well, you're at full throttle a good portion of that time, but you're not at full throttle for 1 minute straight.
Right.
So the tolerances, the speed, the pressures, the G's, all of that.
Everything.
It's so much higher. To me, it's unfathomable because I looked at a slip that you posted on Instagram. It's like 456 miles an hour or something like that.
Yeah.
That's airline. That's you flying in the sky speed, but you're on a salt flat.
So if just to give people like a kind of a perspective of every single little part needs to be thought about, okay? Down to the smallest little detail. Perfect example. Your tire Schrader valve, where you fill your tire, cannot be mounted radially because it will actually depress the spring and start to let air out of the tire if it's mounted radially.
Crazy.
It needs to be mounted axially. So now take that one tiny little thing and now put it over the length of a 32-foot vehicle. Every single aspect of everything needs to be thought about.
Right.
So it's for somebody that wants to go out and build a car for the first time, I would say go out to, whether it be land speed racing or whether it be any kind of racing, go out to the top guys and just watch them. Watch them for a while. Ask lots of questions. Ask the important questions. What things were overlooked the very first time you ever built something? Learn from other people's mistakes. Let them do the homework for you. And more times than not, if you're asking those kinds of questions, those people know that you're actually interested in winning.
Yeah.
And they will soon have a competitor on their hands if you keep following forward with it.
Right.
So it's definitely land speed racing is totally different. It's a 5-mile drag race.
Right.
So being wrapped up with like Kenny Detweiler, for instance, he has a dyno and it's a very unique dyno in the software. He had a software engineer actually come by that was from the dyno manufacturer and ask him what they want. What do you want out of this dyno? And he goes, I want to do a dyno run that is my Bonneville run. I want to run this thing for a minute, wide open. I want to go through every single gear. I want it to change load as it's going through the gear. And you see a lot of things just from spitting head gaskets to glowing turbochargers. I mean, it's unreal until you physically see it.
Right.
And then you transfer that all to actually being on the salt flats. And when you're sitting in a car about a half mile off the track, watching this thing fly by at 400, and you're like, that's not the record. I know that's not the record because I know all the numbers. The whole team knows the numbers. And if it's not in those numbers leading up to the marked mile, you're like, it's not a win. Yeah. Might as well just shut it off. But we never do. We just keep it going, But there's a lot of things that happen, a lot of fires because the car is very enclosed, very tight quarters. A lot of moving parts you need to keep track of.
Sure.
Really.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. So it's definitely a different world out there. It's a very laid-back, grassroots type of motorsport. Everybody will give you a beer out of the pits kind of deal. Like, hey, come on over, check it out. You want a beer? Let's sit here and BS,
Right.
Like bench race for hours, And it's cool that it's very fortunate for myself. I got kind of entered into what would be what I call like the top fuel of the land speed racing community. Because when we went out, we were hoping for over 300 when we first started this deal, and we broke 300, and we're like, that seemed too easy. Let's keep going. And then it started to be if it's not a 400 run, we were all bent out of shape.
Yeah.
I mean, the car, the team has, I'm probably going to get it wrong, but I want to say 36 runs over 400 miles an hour.
Wow.
So, and only more people have walked on the moon than gone 400 on the ground.
Yeah. That's
so
insane.
It's pretty crazy to be part of a project that put that together.
Right. And I think people underestimate. They're like, well, if an airplane can go 400 or 500 or 600, why can't a car?
So that's a funny thing you bring that up, because I would actually go to PRI every year, and I'd sit around and check out or be with the car or whatever it is and be kind of close to this land speed stuff. And some airplane engineers came over and they're like, you guys are freaking nuts. And I was like, what do you mean? You guys build stuff to go Mach. He goes, in no air.
Yeah.
We don't have air resistance.
Right.
And we don't have the plane of the ground as friction.
Yeah.
He goes, you guys are just ludicrous, man. Like, I couldn't even imagine designing something having to deal with the aerodynamics of dealing with the ground.
Right.
And the air difference is like, you guys are like trying to cut through fruitcake with a spoon. It just don't work. Like, there's just nothing. You guys are, it's stupid. And you guys are only driving off of 2 wheels. That's ridiculous. Usually we have thrust.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was like, it kind of put it in perspective, because you never really think about it because you're so close to it that you don't never step back and look at what the team has accomplished until somebody kind of puts you in perspective of like, hey, you guys really did some crazy stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
because Bonneville is what? It's below sea level, right? Or no, is it?
It's above sea level, but the racing altitude, so density altitude at the Bonneville Salt Flats is usually above 5,500 feet.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's quite above.
Yeah. It's pretty thick. Like the air is pretty thick.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think what people don't maybe what, I don't think it's a misunderstanding. I think it's underestimating. Is what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep that car from flying. Yeah. Airplanes, lift is a completely different subject. You mentioned no air, and just to kind of clear things up for people that maybe don't know, when you're flying at 30,000 feet or 35,000 feet, which is where commercial aviation usually is, between, let's say, like 30 and 40,000 feet, the air is very, very thin. Yeah. So there is very, very little drag. You just got to make sure that you keep that airplane in the sky. And that's what the wings are for, and you create lift, and there's your flight, right? But you're literally trying to push against a brick wall, and you're trying to do that at speeds above 400 miles an hour. Right. Yeah. So it's just like, I know so little about this world, but just hearing what you guys are able to do and how you're able to do it and the time that you're able to do it. Yeah. It's incredible, because you've got people that are now looking at videos, let's say, of the guys that did the world record run in the Koenigsegg, right? Outside of Vegas. Well, that car could do 280 miles an hour. Well, that car had a development budget of millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Here's the other thing. Everybody says, oh, well, drag cars can do this. Here's the other thing. Right. You have no traction. Yeah. None. Yeah. Like, the traction pad on a drag car is probably minimum of 15 inches wide. Right. Right. And you've got a tire that wrinkles like nobody's business, right? Because it's got maybe 8 pounds in it. 5 pounds in it, whatever, just enough to hold the car up until it starts moving. Our back tires are pumped to 100 PSI. Wow. The contact patch is about 3 inches wide. So you're trying to put, the Speed Demon has 2,700 horsepower. You're trying to put 2,700 horsepower to the ground through 3 inches, 2 3-inch patches. On salt. That's, everybody, you would think of it as like sandpaper, but it's not. It's I think the surface it's like hard gravel that the top layer kind of moves around, but after you get through that top layer, it's kind of hard, you know? But it's not all the traction you can think of. Sure. It's definitely not. And that's where a lot of like, oh, well, if it doesn't go over 300, drag cars can do 300. But it's like, it's kind of a different world, Like, if we had unlimited traction and you put that engine in an unlimited traction car, you would be doing 300 pretty much no problem, because guys are doing it now all the time. Like, pro mods, I think, are making upwards of 4,000, but a couple of years ago they were making 3,000, which we're pretty close to 2,700. But they hold together for 5 seconds. 6 seconds. We're holding together for a minute.
Yeah.
So we detune it. I mean, we don't detune it. We allow it to have the most amount of horsepower that it could use.
Sure.
So I would say even if you're driving by I-70 between Nevada and Utah, you owe it to yourself to just stop by if you are a car guy. I don't care if you're an import guy. I don't care if you're a drifter, IndyCar driver. I don't care. Mm-hmm. You have to stop just to see the surface and see what it's all about.
Yeah.
We had an IndyCar driver actually come out and check it out, and he was like, "This stuff is wild." like crazy wild, right. You know? And it's kind of like our transmission, or I say the Speed Demon's transmission manufacturer. It's Liberty Gears out of Michigan, a guy named Craig Liberty. We kept asking him a bunch of questions on the phone, he's like, you know what? I'm just going to come out this year. I'm just going to do it. Booked a hotel. He came out. And this is a guy building pro stock transmissions and of caliber transmissions like that. Mm-hmm. And every car is a cookie cutter car, and he comes out and he goes, "This is the coolest form of racing I've ever seen." He's like, "Not one car is the same. None of you guys have any serious backing. Not one of you has any serious backing. You guys are like in the realm of professional racing. You guys are a joke because you guys we don't have Monster. We don't have Red Bull. We don't have all these crazy sponsors. Sure. It's just not a well-seen sport. Mm-hmm. I think it's partly due to the organizers are a little bit on the older side, so they're really not too up on the younger generation of things on how to make this thing viable to watch for people, viable for guys my age to get interested. Because realistically, on the Speed Demon team, when we first started this deal, and for pretty much a long time of the whole deal, I was the youngest guy by 20 years.
Wow.
Like, that's a lot of years to be. I was the young gun out there for a long time, and there's not too many young guys going out there. Right. And it would be nice to just see, even if you just took your import and put a different set of tires on it and went out there and just been like, this is cool. El Mirage is close, and it's fun. Yeah.
It's terrifyingly fun.
Exactly. And that's the bug, man. You get the bug and you go. And I think I'd like to see a lot more younger guys out there. And I really made a point as part of the Speed Demon team is to go around into the pits and check stuff out and see what everybody's about and see what everybody's working on. And I've met a ton of cool people through that. You see 1,000 horsepower Volkswagens that have a giant hair dryer on them, and it's just, and then you see an old timer with a flathead that is just really doing good. And you just see a lot of cool old stuff that you're like, oh, that should have that. Oh, wait a minute. That's totally different and awesome.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of, I would say, ingenuity in making it happen, because these guys are all on their own budgets. There's no big sponsors.
Yeah.
And I would call it the last form of grassroots racing.
All right, so tell me a little bit about your shop.
So, Ace Auto Works is basically my shop, and I take on all kinds of projects. Basically, I get a lot of projects where people are kind of at their wits' end and they are done trying to figure it out. They bring it to me and I figure it out for them.
Got it.
Whether it be a subframe doesn't fit, an engine doesn't fit a car. I got a bunch of turbo piping that I just really am not good at making. Perfect. I'll make that. So I do a lot of turbo headers, do a lot of just standard headers on hot rods. Just to give you an example, like right now in the shop, literally this day, we have an 08 Sierra that's got a 88 millimeter turbocharger on it. Okay. Guy came in and said, "Here's my turbo. The stock or the manifolds are there already. I need all the rest of the plumbing done. I need an intercooler installed, and I need the intake manifold put on. I need you to mount the coils, fit the injectors, and make everything work." Sure, no problem. That's what we do. Put battery relocations, whatever you guys want, that's what we get done. So another car we have in the shop right now is what they call S13.5. So it's a F mix between an S13 and S15. And it's getting a roll cage for competition drift. Then we've got our land speed car.
Mhm.
It's a 2JZ powered car with a Jericho transmission and a quick change. And like I've said in the thing before, we've revamped the entire car. So, and then right next to that, we have a zipper kit car, which is a hot rod.
Mhm.
And the customer, I built a header on it probably 8 years ago. Still a good friend of mine calls me, says, "Hey, I want to do an electric e-brake."
Okay.
Sure. And he said, something's wrong with my belts, like the front belt tension and alignment and stuff. So we looked at that. We realigned his belt, moved the alternator, made a external bracket to hold the alternator a little tighter, put actually a real tensioner in there because it didn't have one, and put the e-brake on. And now we're figuring out how to get it out the door. So that's that. And then we got another car that's coming in. Sure you've heard of it, an Ultima GTR.
Yes. Yes, I have.
Kind of a unique car.
Yeah.
So we
Street legal too, which is crazy.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm kind of excited to get on that one. The customer also wants a electronic e-brake installed, and he's got a rear subframe cross member that he needs made up out of tubing. Sure, no problem. And one thing that we've actually started doing at the shop is 3D printing. So we've added a lot of benefit from 3D printing objects. So we'll draw it up, 3D print it, and use it as a 3D printed part or send it out for machine, whatever needs to be done. That's actually really, really helped my brain thought on how to get things done.
Awesome.
So instead of making a little bracket that takes me 4 hours to make, I can draw it up and have it printed. And the best part about printers is they work when you don't care. You're not paying attention to them all night long. They're printing.
Right.
So, and we have CNC cutting capability.
Awesome.
So we have a cutting table that can duplicate all of our brackets that we need, or we draw them up and they're perfect off the get-go. We don't have to cut anything by hand, even though you still need to time and time again.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's our shop. We do all kinds of fabrication. We're more geared towards a little bit more of the race car world because don't really like to deal with the street driver and problems of that kind of market, especially right now in California. It's not really the greatest thing. So
yeah, well, it hasn't been. California is not super friendly to us.
No. But yeah, all kinds of fabrication, really, from roll cages to plumbing to mounting, whatever you got, we can handle it.
Let's tell people where you can find your shop, your Instagram, your shop's Instagram. I know you separate those two, so fire away.
All right. So if you want to check us out, we have a webpage. It's Aced Auto Works, and it's ACEDAUTOWORX.com. And the same thing for our Instagram. It's ACEDAUTOWORX. And then my personal Instagram is Tungsten Killer. And those are where you can find us and check out what we do.
Awesome. So if you have any tungsten that needs to be killed.
It's kind of funny. I got that name when I started fabricating because every time I'd pick up the torch, I'd totally just annihilate the tungsten on it. And one guy at the shop, he's like, "Dude, you're just the tungsten killer." And I was like, "All right, I'll take it."
The Road Stories podcast is recorded and edited by me, Michael Senderovich. If you like the show, please leave me a review wherever you listen. It helps the show greatly. And finally, please follow me on Instagram at Road Stories Mike. Thanks so much for listening.